A review of application fees was included as a priority 1 item for this. The board specifically directed staff to consider increasing the minimum expenditure per dwelling unit for recreational facilities in certain P districts. And today we'll highlight both topics and provide staff's recommendations for board consideration and discussion. Zoning fees were last increased comprehensively in 2011. It was a 3.1% increase. The increase before that in 2009 was 200%. In 2021, as part of ZMOD, or the Zoning Ordinance Modernization project, new fees were created, but there essentially wasn't any increase or adjustments of fees at that time. One of the main justifications for previous increases, especially 2009, was to increase cost recovery from certain application fees up to 75%. And the 2011 amendment included the 3.1% increase to offset increase in staff fringe benefits. These amendments both use the Consumer Price Index for their analysis, as well as an analysis of fees in neighboring jurisdictions. Since 2011, total hourly cost, which includes hourly rate and fringe benefits, increased by 51% for Department of Planning and Development planners. In addition to salary increases, Department of Planning and Development has an additional 21 full-time planners, which is a 34% increase. It has been 12 years since the last comprehensive increase, and over that period, the Consumer Price Index, which tracks inflation and other costs in the region, increased 36%. To keep in line with these rising costs, staff recommends a matching increase in application fees of 35%, rounding to the nearest $5 amount, consistent with the increase in CPI. This increase puts the department in a better position for cost recovery. Staff recommends that the appeal fee of $600 only be raised 20%. This would preserve the ability for applicants to challenge a decision made by the zoning administrator if they believe it has been made in error. This slide shows the side-by-side comparison of current Fairfax County fees and the proposed 35% increase compared to neighboring jurisdictions. And in acknowledging there's a lot of information on this slide, again, for the questions, if we need to come back to it to spend some more time, very happy to do that. In summarizing neighboring jurisdictions, Fairfax County is in line regarding compliance letters, appeals, and special permits, even with a 35% increase, acknowledging again 20% for appeals. In regard to special exception and rezoning applications, Fairfax County would have the highest fees with a 35% increase. However, we do know that neighboring jurisdictions such as Loudoun and Arlington have both indicated increases are currently being researched. On a related topic, the zoning ordinance requires recreational facilities to be provided in all planned districts. That includes a residential component, except the PRC and PCC districts. These facilities must be provided on site by the developer or, if approved by the board, on land outside the proposed development. The developer must currently spend $1,900 per dwelling on these facilities. This amount was last updated in 2017. Since the last update, inflation has increased by 25% and the construction cost index has increased approximately 25%. Staff recommends an increase from $1,900 to $2,400, and that's roughly a 26% increase. And that number, 26%, is just, it's a good round number. Pardon me. Our timeline, we have gone to the Land Use Policy Committee and Process Review Committees in February. March, we received authorization and we are doing general outreach. And the public hearings for Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors will be held in April. And that is all I have, and I'm going to hand off to my colleague.
I'm muted. Thanks, Adam. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kirsten Munns. I'm with Land Development Services. I'm the Director of the Permitting and Code Administration Division. and I'm going to share similar presentation on proposed fee increases related to building and site records that are administered by Land Development Services. So those that are familiar with our fees and Land Development Services are also familiar with Appendix Q. That's our fee schedule. It is an appendix to the municipal code. That's where you will find the vast majority of all of our fees. Appendix Q establishes LDS and some fire marshal fees for site and building processes. The last time we made a broad update to Appendix Q was in January of 2015, so that was almost 10 years ago. So first we want to talk about why fees are increasing, why we're proposing that they increase. The first, as Adam also mentioned, we want to account for inflation and salary increases. So the cost of doing business for us has gone up, just like every other business has over the last 10 years. So we want to account for that. You can see a screenshot of the Consumer Price Index inflation calculator from January of 2015 to October of 2023, indicating a 32% increase due to inflation. So we're taking that into account. The second reason is that Land Development Services is a special revenue fund. So it is our goal to fully recover the cost of the services that we provide. So we're trying to do that more fully. We're not fully collecting fees to cover all of our costs currently. So we're trying to get closer to that goal. And the third reason is that we have done comparison with some of our peer jurisdictions in the area and have found with many of our fees that they are on the low end. So we think it's reasonable to kind of bring those in line with what we're seeing with our peers. So I want to talk just at a high level about what the proposed changes consist of. So the first is that we currently have a technology surcharge fee at 4% that covers technology-related expenses. The one that's probably our biggest expense is the Plus system. So that we are proposing to increase from 4% to 10%. We did find that a technology surcharge was very common in our neighboring jurisdictions and ranged from anywhere from 10 to 18%. So we feel like this is reasonable and would help us cover those costs. The second is that we are instituting a new 2% Code Academy surcharge on building fees. So that is a Virginia requirement for us to participate in the Code Academy that is statewide. And this will just ensure that we are able to participate as we are required. The third is that we're increasing building fees by 25%. Again, this is to account for increased staffing and inflation and the increased cost of compensation. Note that this does not include vertical transportation fees, which you also may know of as elevators. Those we have found are at an appropriate level already. The fourth change that we're proposing is to increase site fees by 10%, again, for similar reason that we're increasing building fees. The fifth change is the removal of obsolete fees. So there's some kind of miscellaneous fees in our fee schedule that are not used anymore. So for instance, there's a digitization fee that we were using when we were scanning paper plans as we were transitioning to a digital permit process. That, of course, is not being used anymore because everything is submitted digitally, so we don't need that on our schedule anymore. There's a few other fees like that we're just eliminating, trying to clean things up. The sixth fee is a specific fee for pedestrian bridges. So these are primarily submitted by some of our agency partners at FCDOT and the Park Authority. We haven't had a clear definition of how to charge for these fees in the past. So we've set up a structure, a flat fee for custom bridges, and then clarified how a master file fee would be applied for those that are set up using a master file process. So the intent of this is to provide clarity and consistency and to charge an appropriate amount for the amount of work that we're doing to process these permits. The seventh change is what we're calling a second tier signature set fee for site-related plans. So currently, when a site-related plan is getting close to approval, there's a signature set process if just a couple of the sheets, up to 5 sheets, are changing. We do realize that sometimes relatively minor changes can involve a few more than 5 sheets. So rather than charging a full resubmission fee, we're setting up another fee level that will amount to a few $100s if the changes involve 6 to 20 sheets. So we think that will be a more affordable and reasonable way to kind of get through that signature set process when there's just a few more than 5 sheets. And the last proposed change is a minor revision fee for site-related plans. So again, this is something that's these are intended to be very minor in nature, where a slight change needs to be made to a site-related plan so that it's consistent perhaps with the final building design, but doesn't require a full amendment to that site plan. So this is kind of a summary of several projects and how the fees would relate to the cost of the project. So we've looked at a residential deck project, a new single-family dwelling, a townhouse development, a commercial retail tenant, and a new commercial building. These are just anecdotal kind of examples, but it kind of gives you an idea of what the kind of the felt change will be. We've indicated what the project cost or the value is, depending on which data we had available, how much the fee came out to be for these projects. So for instance, a residential deck that was valued at $5,000, the existing fee is $112.32, which is just over 2% of the project cost. The proposed fee, as it's proposed in today, the cost of that permit would be $151.20, which would be 3% of the project cost. So you can see the difference would go from 2.2% to 3% of the project cost. So we've done a kind of a similar analysis. This will vary based on, some of the specifics of the project, but it does give you an idea of the degree of change for different project types. We also want to highlight, what we're doing with the increased fees. So we have added staff and over the last several years and implemented a lot of improvements that we want to highlight so that it's, you can see what we're doing with the increased fees that we're collecting. The first one is the implementation of the Plus system. So probably everyone on this call is aware of that by now. That has allowed us to handle all of our submissions digitally. Our reviews are done digitally. That allows us to review concurrently rather than passing around a paper set of plans, so it goes faster. It's consolidated all of our permitting systems into one system where all of the data kind of speaks to each other. We have readily available metrics, which is opening up all kinds of options for us to analyze and provide data to our customers. We've created a customer experience team for land development services. This is a team fully dedicated to customer service and answering questions and calls, providing guidance on the application process. We have a staff available during business hours in the building and then on phones to handle those questions. Currently, our hold times are much less than a minute. So we're really dedicated to providing the customer service that's needed so that our process can be followed as easily as possible. In the last 10 years, we've expanded our fast track program. So previously, we accepted projects up to 4,500 square feet. Now that goes up to 10,000 square feet. So the fast track program is what it sounds like. It's kind of an expedited review process. So those plans that fall within that criteria go into a separate queue and get reviewed much faster, usually in about 10 days rather than several weeks if they're in the regular commercial building queue. Since fees were last updated, our site plan review times have been reduced from 90 days to 39 days, so that's over half of what it used to be. Our building permit login times and our site record login times have gone from upwards of 7 days down to just 1 to 2 days. We do We do update our metrics every week, and we show those online so that our customers have full transparency in terms of the time that they can expect. And this is really possible because of the increased staff that we've been able to provide on that team, and also because of the PLUS system and the way that we're able to monitor metrics and have kind of a very close, an ability to closely monitor the plans that are in queue. We've implemented an expedited deck review program in about the last 6 months. So every deck submission that's coming in, it's getting processed within 3 days, 3 business days. Previously, that was up to 2 weeks. So that's a great improvement. And we have numerous web resources to review metrics. We have a new permit library that provides step-by-step guidance through every record type, innumerable GIS tools that have been launched in the last 5 years or so. So these are just some of the improvements that we have implemented since fees were last updated. And we have many more kind of along these lines as well that we're excited to provide. So the fees are going, you know, they are being used for a lot of improvements for our customers. This is our timeline, which is really the same as DPD's timeline. So we do have a Planning Commission hearing coming up on April 3rd. April 16th is our board hearing, and the intent is that the new fees would go into effect on July 1st. So that's all I have, and if you have any questions, I think we'll take those at the end of the presentation. Thank you. I think I'm turning it over to Chief Benoit.
Good afternoon. Hopefully everybody can see my my screen trying to share it. So much like DPD and LDS, we're also looking at doing a fee increase. Sorry, one sec. So the fee increases we're looking at is cover Chapter 62, which is the fire protection fee schedule. As part of the county code related to fire protection, establishes our fire marshal fees and for permits and inspections.
Hey, Chief, I
Yes.
don't think you are sharing your screen if you had intended to.
Let me back up. How about now?
Perfect.
All right, sorry about that. So we're looking at fee increases covering Chapter 62 under the fire protection fee schedule. It's related to our fire protection fees, plan reviews, permits, and inspections. Last update, much like LDS and DPD, was in January of 2015, so FY 2016. We're also looking at doing the plan review under Chapter 61 Appendix Q, which actually relates to the actual plan review, testing and inspection of sprinkler systems, and then any reinspection fees. So we kind of discussed earlier, we haven't touched our fees since 2015. At the time, cost recovery was nearly 100%. We try to aim for a 90% to 100% corridor, but we've seen that kind of slightly decreasing over time. So up through about 2018, we were doing pretty well. Then we started during COVID, and then post-COVID, we started to see a tail off where FY24, we were looking at a 71% cost recovery estimate. Based on the an increase in 35% of our expenditures, starting in compared to 2016, we're starting to see a decrease. And then the estimate for FY25, we're estimating a 9% decrease in revenue rates. So if we don't do an increase in our fees, we'll start to see a cost recovery less than 70%, which isn't sustainable for us. So we were looking at, for our permit and inspection fees, just going from a 30% increase, going from the current rate, which is $150, to proposed $195 for the permit fees. For the plan review and acceptance testing, we do an hourly rate in 15-minute increments. So currently our rate's $156 per hour. We were looking at a 33% increase to $208 per hour. When we look at the potential impact to projects and there's various complexities based on the complexity of the plan, the nature of the plan submitted and the plan review, there's various increase. So we're roughly seeing anywhere from a $52 increase for small nominal plan review up to, for the larger projects, we could see up to like a $30,000 increase. But those are the large footprint, like I said, as we're looking at, that's over 150,000 square foot residential. So all of those are kind of in line. We kind of put those out for sharing. As we go forward, trying to make sure we're monitoring, we'll coordinate with our partners in LDS and zoning to make sure we're trying to do this in step with each other, and we'll kind of estimate that, and we'll probably do a review on a more timely basis. And that's all I have for the Office of the Fire Marshal.
Thank you very much. At this point, we are happy to take any questions that might be out there.
Just one question. Will these slides be made available just for like the interest of my colleagues?
For ours, I know I think it was, I will find the link and put it in there, but we did have a presentation saved down, so absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, is that Mike I see with a hand raise?
Yeah, Mike Benai with McGuire Woods. One quick question. That was whether there had been any discussions regarding either separate fees or relief, or I guess potential to have relief on fees for developments that meet certain criteria. And I'm thinking mostly affordable housing developments. If something's 100% income restricted, is there a path to potentially, have lower filing fees? Mainly thinking of the zoning side of things, but I suppose that could be considered on really any of them. Others that come to mind are some of the nonprofits as well. But I'm just curious, was that any sort of part of any discussions on this, or part of the scope, or just curious?
No, this is more, I guess, reviewing and considering current fees as opposed to adopting new text or policy. If that makes sense. I'm sorry. I hope I answered the question.
Oh, that makes sense. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, looks like we have another hand raised.
Hello, everyone. I was just wondering, 35% it's a big jump, but with any of these changes, the implementation and the timing of it. So it looks like looking at whatever the board decides to go with will go in effect July 1st. Is there been discussion on if you have so what if you have an application or permit filed but not yet accepted? Like what is the timeline that, like, if we get, because when we're telling clients, when people are going in on what check to write, that if you file something in June and it's not through acceptance until July 1st, that you run the risk of being asked for additional fees? Or is it anything received before July 1st would, I guess, when is that cutoff of going into effect, and what does that actually mean going into effect for anything pending?
Hey, David, this is Casey Judge. So we do have proposed language in our Appendix 1, which is our provisions related to previous approvals for the zoning ordinance, where it'd be any application filed before the effective date, so before July 1. It would not need to be accepted, so just filed in plus fully filed by July 1st.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And I'll just add to that, just similarly in LDS, if you've submitted before July 1st, the existing fees will apply.
And the same for fire.
And we did have a question come up in the chat about for appeals being 20%. So specifically, appeals are a way for someone to, I guess, open up a discussion feeling a judgment may have been made in error, and making that fee too high can act as a gatekeeper, to be honest with you. So that was the consideration for the 20% increase in appeals. And it looks like we have, is it Dave? Did you have a question? Sittler.
Sorry, had to come off mute. So Kirsten, quick question for you on the signature set fees. I've got a client with a site plan that may be kind of needing a signature set in June. Are these, if they haven't been accepted, we're kind of stuck out of luck, right? Or are you thinking about implementing signature set fees before they are before they have been approved by the board?
No, we will not implement, we can't implement any of these changes before the board approves them. So currently, just to be clear, there is an existing no fee signature set process for up to 5 sheets. So that exists, right? That exists, and that will continue to exist.
Okay.
This is a kind of a second tier where if you have up to 20 sheets, between 6 and 20 sheets changing, that still consists of minor changes, we will handle those as a much less expensive signature set. It will be a couple $100. I think it was $85 plus $80 per sheet, something like that, rather than charging you a full resubmission fee. So that's the way it's set up now. Once you have over 6 sheets, you have to pay a full resubmission fee. So we're trying to give you some relief to that if it's still a minor.
So if I'm getting close, I might want to wait until after the board. I might want to wait until after the board has approved it if I think I'm going to have 6 to 20 sheets.
That's a good question. I will have to follow up on that just to confirm. So let me confirm the timing of that for an application that's in process, and I can get back to you. But thanks for bringing that up. That's a good question.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Looks like we have Mike, Stephanie, and then Christina. So Mike, would you like to go ahead?
That may have been me. I've already asked my question. Appreciate it.
Got it. Stephanie.
All right, well, thank you all for taking the time to review the cost. I'm a little shell-shocked at some of the increases, and I appreciate that you are comparing it to other counties and trying to figure out something that's fair. I just think that I'll just go through each item. The percentages that y'all are showing, I'll go back to it. Even though you're comparing it to another county, I think overall, you still want to have something that works and not the idea that Fairfax County is so expensive, we're going to go to another county to try to develop. And I'm sure y'all are aware that Fairfax County, everyone wants to be there, but still, I don't think the rationale should be weighted on, and our jurisdictions around have similar or lower fees, that type of thing. The second item that is that in the example that Kirsten had for the townhouses that are 41 units, so the idea is you're going from 0.4% of the cost to 0.5% of the cost. That doesn't seem like it's a lot, but when you look at the dollar amount, that's $33,000. That's nearly $33,400. And that's not something that's going to be easily swallowed by anyone, and it's going to impact the prices of the house sales price. So these are my initial comments. And then the item about the sheets and having a discount if it's 5 to 10, I think you said 20 pages or whatever. You know, sometimes we get comments from the reviewers, and like, for instance, I have a site plan that has 157 pages. Well, there can be a change on one and it affects 20 or 30 pages. So that isn't going to help me. And I just would like to offer that instead it's based on the number of comments. And that way, if it's 20 comments, you kind of get a pass, and it doesn't matter how many sheets it is. It's more so related to the number of comments that you have to address. So those are, okay, the final thing that I'll speak about is the tech fee. going from 4% to 10%. And what that means is if you have a $4,000 fee, instead of paying $1,600 now, you're going to be paying $4,000. And again, that's a lot. And I don't know if y'all have considered whether to have this tiered so that, because I mean, how much more technology are you paying for if it's a $40,000 fee? I mean, the difference of $4,000 and $1,600, I just think that that needs to be looked at because it's going to be a multiplier and that can be an issue. But anyway, those are my initial comments, and thank you for your time and for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. We appreciate that. We'll take that. We'll look into those and follow up as needed. Thank you.
And Christina, would you like to go ahead?
Hi, thank you. Appreciate you having this informational session and adding the bridge into the fee structure for us. Thank you. I do have a question, though. It doesn't really have to do with the new fees so much as the plus project docs to plus system and the migration of major plans that weren't approved and how those fees are. So we had some PI plans that were submitted in the old system, but now we're resubmitting, but the records didn't migrate. So now, is it a resubmission? Is it a new submission? How is that fee going to be calculated?
It should be a resubmission if you've already paid the initial submission fee, because we do still have those records. If you want, Christine, I can reach out to you directly after this and get those record numbers, and we can look further into that and kind of figure out how to best resolve it.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. Adam, I think you're muted.
Sorry. So it doesn't look like we have any further questions. Last call. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us during this Lunch and Learn, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.